When the last year's budget was presented on 1st Feb 2020, the finance minister had no idea that 2020 was going to be one of the toughest years for the entire world. Last year, the finance minister's big budget ideas were Aspirational India, Economic Development, A Caring Society. What happened to these ideas? India is still an aspirational society, but because of COVID-19, our economy may have shrunk by as much as 10% this year. What do we aspire to do from here? Economic development was already slowing down, and COVID-19 has turned it negative. What does 2021 have in store? India is doing its best to be serving everyone in this pandemic. But how do we vaccinate everyone as quickly as possible? The budget will have to face and answer these questions and many more. In 2019, India's GDP growth had reduced to 4.2%. However, that looks quite better compared to the projections for 2020. National Statistical Office, that is the NSO, predicts the Indian GDP rate will be minus 7.3%. The World Bank thinks this rate will be minus 9.6%. Let's look at the sectors one by one. Agriculture in India grew at a rate of 3.4%, the only major sector to see growth this year. Manufacturing declined at a rate of minus 9.6%. The service sector was also badly hit. Tourism slowed down, people didn't go out to eat, salons remained empty. Nevertheless, India is making a recovery. Experts का मानना है कि इंडियन इकोनॉमी इस साल 5% के रेट से ग्रो करने का पोटेंशियल रखती है. By undertaking some serious reforms, the government can aim for the utmost growth potential. चलिए इंडिया के fiscal deficit numbers को देखते हैं. This year prompted emergency spending from the government. When the country was under lockdown, economic activity stopped, and yet the government had to take care of its people. इस वजह से इस साल government spending काफी increase हुई, but government revenue decreased due to lower economic activity. This has created a big fiscal deficit. Some say the deficit would be as high as 2 trillion rupees. Fiscal deficit was already 4.6% of the GDP last year, a 7-year high. This is where we start seeing a pattern. A lot of trends, which were already negative, have been made worse by the pandemic. Economic growth was already slowing. The pandemic made it negative. The fiscal deficit was already getting big. 2020 made it bigger. The finance minister has a difficult balancing act ahead. एक तरफ finance minister को fiscal deficit को control में लाना होगा. No government can afford to spend beyond its means for a long period of time. On the other hand, a lot of different sectors are calling for a stimulus. According to the Keynesian approach, during a recession, a government should stimulate demand in the economy by running a deficit. A stimulus would mean that the government will inject a lot of cash into the economy through cash transfers, lower interest rate, and financial incentives to spend instead of save money. However, tax collections have been much lower due to the negative economic growth, and even the funds raised from disinvestment didn't meet the targeted amount. To create a stimulus from such a state can be tricky. Every budget speech's impact on jobs is closely looked at. 2020 was a year in which a lot of people lost their jobs. Quads reported India's COVID-19 lockdown pushed more women out of an already shrinking female workforce. जैसे कि आप चार्ट में देख सकते हैं, सबसे ज्यादा जॉब लॉस यूथ पॉपुलेशन का हुआ है. Close to 121 million jobs were lost in April last year, but 110 of these jobs came back in the next 3 months. While the number of jobs moderately increased by 5 million in August and September, they again fell in October. The recovery in the job market, therefore, has been on and off. To create new jobs, we will need business-friendly rules and reform the bureaucratic red tape to avoid any incessant delays. The finance minister will also need to consider providing financial relief to small and medium-sized enterprises in some form. These are the enterprises that employ a bulk of the country after all. The construction sector might provide some relief to the finance minister and some interesting opportunities. Due to cheap loans and builders cutting the cost to attract buyers, real estate in urban India is more affordable than before. In the last quarter of 2020, more residential units were built in cities like Mumbai than the last quarter of 2019. ये दिखाता है कि रियल एस्टेट सेक्टर में सप्लाई पिकअप कर रहा है और डिमांड ज्यादा पीछे नहीं है. The construction sector will hope the budget comes with positive reform. The recently announced Rs 25,000 crore stress fund will certainly come in handy. To boost economic growth, the government announced corporate tax cuts last year. To make an economic recovery this year, the government might need to consider cutting the personal income tax too. This will leave more money in people's hands without the need of complicated handouts. जब लोगों के हाथ में ज्यादा पैसा होता है, तब लोग ज्यादा पैसा खर्चते हैं. This could lead to a pickup in the national demand for goods and services, and that could spur on the dormant economy. However, some experts warn that in a crisis, people might save their money instead of spending it. That might defeat the purpose of a tax cut. The finance minister will need to tread carefully here as well. To boost investment, the finance minister might look at reduce or do away with the capital gains tax, that is LTCG, and the dividend distribution tax, that is DDT. This will create an incentive for people to invest in equities, commodities, and other financial assets. Investment is core to a country's economic growth, and therefore, this might be the correct move to make. Another interesting thing to watch out for: how will the finance minister allocate resources for defense? China के साथ तनाव बढ़ रहा है. China seeks to become America's equal in terms of Asian defense and offense capabilities. China also continues to work on new groundbreaking technology like drone swarms that can be a threat to India's sovereignty. The Indian military forces need financial backing from the Indian government to stay fully prepared. The finance minister will have to strike a balance between the civilian and military demands of the country. Dr. Jyotsna Jha, a budget expert, has noted that it isn't so much about how much money the government spends. What's also important is the direction in which it spends the money. The budget's allocation for education and healthcare will also be closely monitored. 2020 में healthcare की importance तो सबको पता चल गई है. We now see that healthcare should focus not just on treating disease, but also staying healthy. In the past, India's expenditure on healthcare has remained low. Will things change in this year's budget? The education sector has also undergone serious challenges. The government can help parents and students by investing in digital skills and internet infrastructure. This will ensure that the benefits of remote learning spread to all and aren't restricted to a choice few. Here are the key highlights of this video. Take a screenshot for future references. The economic growth has turned negative in 2020. Only agriculture has shown positive growth. The government needs to introduce intelligent policies to promote growth in the manufacturing and services sector. Small and medium-scale enterprises must be aided to create new jobs. The government can look towards decreasing the tax burden to boost growth. Investments promote growth, and hence investments can be promoted by decreasing or abolishing taxes on capital gains. Budget allocations for defense, healthcare, and education will be closely watched. Thanks for watching this video.
Investments in securities market are subject to market risks. Read all the related documents carefully before investing.